Hello everybody, this is Dr. Lisa Ann Homick from Homick Advanced Chiropractic and BrainSense Telehealth Self-Discovery Sessions. This is part 4 of, here's the title, Your Poisoned Nervous System is Not Contagious to Others. I am reading an article from the Weston A. Price Foundation. The link is below. I suggest you print it and hang on to it. Take notes, but keep a copy for yourself. I'm reading it word for word, stopping with my opinions, editorializing, and talking about why I think this is such a fascinating viewpoint coming from Italy. I haven't heard anything like this coming from the United States. If you've been watching part 1, part 2, and part 3, I thank you. It's been kind of slow, kind of long, but I appreciate your interest in this topic. I'm on page 12. We've got to go to page 18. Let's jump right to it. Looking back at the history of viral infectious diseases, we may remember another plague that affected the nervous system, poliomyelitis. In that case, the problem involved paralysis of limbs, and death was due to paralysis of the respiratory muscles. To help patients breathe, people used artificial lungs that mechanically replaced the respiratory muscle contraction. I think that these artificial lungs could have been of more help for COVID-19 patients and certainly would not have caused the many deaths that resulted from the inhibitory drugs used for intubation. This is the first time I've heard of this comparison between the two types of lung care, I guess you could call it. Another question, when the nervous system is affected by the COVID-19, what happens with the immune system? The simple answer is that the white blood cells are our nervous system, our brain in our blood. The neurotransmitters are in our blood circulation and they affect our immune system. This explains how our emotions can change our immunity for better or worse. So he moves on looking for solutions to the enigma. I believe the solution to this enigma was given to me by the son of a patient who survived COVID, who urged me to speak up. He's quoting this friend. Children must see their elderly parents. They have to go and put food in their mouths in the most positive and loving way. This is the explanation of every successful therapy. Children must go to their parents to help them recover. This is so simple. Yes. This is what's necessary. Just simple, loving care of your relatives. I'm speechless. It's not a difficult thing. It's not medical. Maybe that's the problem. Feeding your own family members, giving them food to their mouths. This is essential to life. Why we've forgotten the basics is beyond me, and that's going to be our downfall. It already is. It already is. In northern Italy, this did not happen. Old people were left in retirement homes, and from there taken to hospitals or left alone at home. As a colleague mentioned, once children could no longer enter the retirement homes to feed their parents, the parents all died. We see people frightened to see their parents, or parents frightened to see their grandchildren. But once they are together and taking care of each other, the fear disappears. There's something about togetherness that is life-saving, survival. And I'm going to add this in here. If you look at Stephen Porges, his work, polyvagal theory, this is all polyvagal theory at work. The fear disappears when you're together and when you're taking care of each other. And this is a primal instinct, the tribalness, the togetherness. And you see the animals who flock together. Why aren't we doing that? Why are we just so opposite of what makes common sense? Certainly, good advice from a conscientious physician can help, but without the care of their children, old people hardly ever make it. There's no replacement. There is absolutely no substitute for the love of a family member and the presence of a family member. I cannot stress enough that this disease is not contagious. People should overcome fear and help each other. We should not think selfishly, because once you help your elderly parent, your children will learn to do the same with you when you need it. I love it. This is great. This is just a basic part of being human. I feel the only cure to this pandemic is to recover our shared humanity. Now the sidebars jump in. The way I printed it, the printer put the sidebars next. I'm going to go through them, and then this author makes a few final comments. So I'm just going to go in order. Interestingly, a recent article suggests that the symptoms diagnosed as COVID-19 are actually manifestations of a B1 thiamine deficiency. Although the author clearly sees how the problems in COVID patients are in the autonomic nervous system, just as I describe in this article, he attributes them solely to a B1 deficiency. I believe microwaves are the problem, and that B1 deficiency worsens microwave effects on the autonomic nervous system. That said, vitamin B1 supplementation probably would assist nervous system functioning and certainly could be helpful for diabetic patients who are taking metformin or patients taking diuretics, as both of these drugs deplete vitamin B1. Now let's talk about vitamin D. Why do people exposed to sunlight recover before other patients? The answer is that vitamin D is a neuroprotector and modulator of the autonomic nervous system in many ways, some of which, summarized below, were outlined in an article published in U.S. Neurology in April 2018. Neuronal excitability. Loss of neuronal excitability, which occurs with aging, is a proposed cause of cognitive decline. Studies in rats show that vitamin D3 supplementation increases neuronal excitability in the hippocampus. Synaptic functioning. Vitamin D upregulates genes essential for synaptic plasticity, as well as those needed for normal synaptic functioning, including receptors for major neurotransmitters such as dopamine, glutamate, and serotonin. Dopamine synthesis. In Parkinson's disease, the observed dysfunction of the substantia nigra, the midbrain region responsible for producing dopamine, the so-called feel-good hormone. This has been attributed to a decrease in tyrosine hydroxylase and dopamine synthesis. TH, tyrosine hydroxylase, is the enzyme that converts the amino acid tyrosine to dopamine. Studies show that vitamin D supplementation increases the TH expression and dopamine production. Big word here, in dopaminergic neurons in the substantia nigra. Vitamin D also upregulates N-cadherin, a protein that plays a mediating role in the creation and development of dopamine neurons, as well as synaptic plasticity and memory. So if we go back to chiropractic college, we studied the substantia nigra. It was a part of the brain, and we were told dysfunction there is Parkinson's. That's it. End of story. That's as far as the lecture went. This explanation here adds more meat to it, explaining the connections. This nutrient helps this nutrient, helps this nutrient, so you can synthesize the neurotransmitters you need to stay alive. Let me turn the page here. Acetylcholine, which we delved into in the maybe part 2 version here of the video. Acetylcholine treatment with vitamin D3 increases the activity of choline acetyltransferase and increases acetylcholine levels in brain areas of relevance to Alzheimer's disease. A major risk factor for cognitive decline and Alzheimer's is type 2 diabetes, which is thought to reduce acetylcholine levels. In animal rat models, vitamin D supplementation has produced improvements in type 2 diabetes related cognitive decline, with the improvements mediated by increased choline acetyltransferase activity and decreased activity of acetylcholinesterase. We are going back again. There's a repetitive theme. Neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes. Remember that loss of smell as an important clue to neurologic degenerative disease. Okay, back to the article. Glutathione. Glutathione acts as both. Sorry about that pause there. I had to sneeze. Look out. The world is coming to an end. I had to sneeze a moment ago. Glutathione acts as both a neurotransmitter and neuromodulator through its action on glutamate receptors. Glutathione confers protection against glutamate excitotoxicity. Vitamin D supplementation increases glutathione levels and has been demonstrated to prevent the glutamate toxicity implicated in cognitive decline. Now, I could do an added video about glutamate toxicity. That would prove to be very interesting. Serotonin, vitamin D responsive elements, VDREs, this is the abbreviation, are found in tryptophan hydroxylase promoter regions. Tryptophan hydroxylase is an enzyme involved in brain serotonin biosynthesis. Research indicates that vitamin D increases expression of TPH2 messenger RNA in the brain, suggesting vitamin D control over brain serotonin levels. In fact, studies point to a role for vitamin D treatment in preventing both dopamine and serotonin depletion in certain areas of the brain. Now, continuing, these are the sidebars are ended. Therapy for COVID patients. The overexpression of receptors to overcome microwave toxicity is something we are all experiencing at some level. If the COVID-19 test, actually measuring the density of these receptors, eventually all exposed to this high-intensity new internet phenomena, will be found positive. However, the old, the fragile, and those taking inhibitory drugs are more likely to get sick. So if this test was actually measuring the density of receptors, we would all test positive. He's making the distinction that the old, fragile, and those taking inhibitory drugs are the ones showing sickness. I believe vitamin C and vitamin D in natural foods, such as fresh citrus, and in sunlight and or cod liver oil, together are a great help in preventing COVID-19 symptoms, along with a healthy, relaxed lifestyle and some micronutrients such as selenium and zinc. These are just the basic building blocks of a healthy body that demonstrates resilience and the ability to adapt to stressors and also to rebuild itself. These are the basic building blocks. Why are they missing in our current lifestyle, in our current world? Why are these common sense things missing? And where's the best place to get them and put them back into your life? Good questions that I'm asking. All the patients I have seen and those I have treated on the phone have responded successfully to the therapies I propose below. So more information coming, although these were generally healthy people. For individuals taking many drugs, the solution is more complicated. However, suspending inhibitory drugs as much as possible must be considered. Now, how often does that happen in our everyday mainstream medical monopoly system? How often does somebody reduce their inhibitory drugs or get off them altogether? So he's saying let them go for a while so the body can heal, and maybe he's proposing go back on them. But so here's his list. Discontinue inhibitory drugs until there is no more sign of toxicity or overdose. I've got to stop here. He admits they're already toxic. Now, if somebody's detoxing, does that mean, great idea, let's go back on these toxic medications? So are we going on the merry-go-round and getting off the merry-go-round, getting on again and off again? Is that the way we should be living? I'm going to let you answer that question for yourself, for you personally. I'm continuing on. More in his list. These are his proposals. Avoid EMF exposure. Also, consume a source of natural vitamin C. Natural being the key word. Take cod liver oil for vitamin D and supporting vitamin A. Get daily sunshine when possible. Eat foods rich in zinc and selenium, or take supplements. Increase vitamin B1 intake. And I'm changing this up a little bit. Everybody probably needs B1. He said if you're diabetic or taking diuretics, but B vitamins are hard to hang on to, so everybody should be concerned about their B vitamins. The effects of microwaves, depending on the duration of exposure and the frequency amplitude, both being factors mostly beyond our ability to control or even check. What we can do is minimize our exposure, especially in the home. Ultimately, I hope the world will find a different way to deal with these new severe intensity levels of microwaves. Lockdowns and masks are not useful and do more harm than good. L-lysine and COVID. Some clinicians are describing L-lysine, the usable form of the essential amino acid lysine, as another successful COVID-19 treatment. Food sources of lysine include meat, seafood, eggs, and dairy products. Among other benefits, L-lysine is known for its anti-anxiety effects through its normalization of adrenal hormones and enhancement of the adrenocorticotropic hormone cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline levels. Repeated theme revisited here. The anti-anxiety effects, because anti-anxiety medication is not good for you, and apparently it may possibly be a nutritional deficiency rather than something that requires medication. And normalizing the adrenal gland. And we talked about that earlier with the adrenal insufficiency. Research indicates that L-lysine also modulates nitric oxide. Research indicates that L-lysine also modulates nitric oxide production. Impaired nitric oxide production can lead to decreased adrenal gland production of the neurotransmitters, so critical to the body's stress response. EMF expert and former biochemistry professor Martin Pall, last name is spelled P-A-L-L, he theorizes that nitric oxide is implicated in pathophysiological responses to EMF exposure through a process that results in oxidative stress and free radical production. For these reasons, L-lysine has attracted the attention of individuals suffering from overt electrosensitivity. L-lysine's ability to indirectly limit nitric oxide production should, in theory, help prevent or inhibit the vicious cycle initially stimulated by EMFs. All of these factors can explain L-lysine's successes in treating COVID-19. Acetylcholine and the nervous system. This is another repetitive theme. This is going to be good information. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter at various synapses, nerves, and at the motor end plate of vertebrate muscles. When a nerve impulse arrives at the nerve ending, acetylcholine stored in vesicles is released and binds to a postsynaptic receptor, causing depolarization. Since acetylcholine is degraded by the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, it has a brief duration of action. Inhibitors of the enzyme, however, prolong the lifetime acetylcholine. Nerve gases and organophosphates lead to accumulation of acetylcholine and associated toxicity. In the synaptic cleft, the released ACH, acetylcholine, will associate with post and pre-junctional receptors and is also subject to rapid hydrolysis of the enzyme acetylcholinesterase into choline and acetate. Over 50% of the choline formed will be taken up again by the nerve terminal and reused for transmitter synthesis. Okay, hang on. This is all a mouthful. In the autonomic nervous system, acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter of all preganglionic and postganglionic parasympathetic neurons. Acetylcholine is also present at the level of many brain synapses, in particular in the basal nucleus. Adrenaline or epinephrine has been considered for years the main neurotransmitter of the sympathetic nervous system, although it was known that the effects of its administration were different from those obtained by direct stimulation of the sympathetic, as well as in the medullary part of the adrenal gland. Adrenaline is also released at the synapse level of the central nervous system, where it plays the role of neurotransmitter. Adrenaline is involved in the fight or flight reaction. In general, its effects are gastrointestinal relaxation, dilation of the bronchi, increased heart rate and systolic volume, and consequently cardiac output, deviation of blood flow to the muscles, liver, myocardium, and brain, and increased glycemia. Noradrenaline or norepinephrine, is a neurotransmitter released by chromaffin cells as a hormone in the blood. It is also a neurotransmitter in the nervous system where it is released by noradrenergic neurons during synaptic transmission. As a stress hormone, it involves parts of the brain where attention and reaction controls reside. Together with epinephrine, it causes the fight or flight response, activating the sympathetic nervous system. To sum up, here we go. The parasympathetic transmission works only on acetylcholine and its cholinergic, while the sympathetic transmission sees acetylcholine only in the preganglionic synaptic space, which then stimulates the release of noradrenaline and adrenaline neurotransmitters at the end of the reflex pathway, giving it the name adrenergic. Thus, if the acetylcholine is not removed by the acetylcholinesterase in the preganglionic cleft, the transmission cannot continue and the adrenergic system does not work. So we're looking at the acetylcholine is not removed properly. There is a lacking of the acetylcholinesterase. This disrupts the process. So you could say the weak link of the chain causes the whole chain to have issues. In cases of emergency, for example, life-threatening circumstances such as hemorrhage or thermal shock, noradrenaline and adrenaline are also made by the adrenal medulla, also without brain stimuli. This emergency stress, if prolonged, may cause exhaustion of the adrenal glands. That's the repetitive theme we're hearing throughout, the exhaustion of the adrenal system. Acetylcholine is also present in non-neuronal cells. In recent years, it has become clear that in the airways, the majority of cells express choline acetyltransferase and contain acetylcholine, including epithelial cells, smooth muscle cells, mast cells, and migrated immune cells such as alveolar macrophages, granulocytes, and lymphocytes. However, the regulatory role of this neuronal acetylcholine in inflammatory airway diseases has not yet been established. I think this can explain the respiratory problem in COVID patients. Furthermore, acetylcholinesterase is also present on the membrane of red blood cells, where the cell shape is regulated. The changes in the red blood cell membrane are connected to thrombotic events, and the role of zinc and vitamin E have shown a better outcome. Thrombotic events related to organophosphate toxicity, meaning cholinesterase damage, have been widely reported. This is the end of the article. Let me backtrack a few paragraphs here. So he is reiterating the exhaustion of the adrenal glands and that give and take within the nervous system. He's also talking about the thrombotic events, that would be blood clotting, and he's comparing it to the poisoning. Thrombotic events come about because of the poison of organophosphates, because that causes the cholinesterase damage. And he's adding that zinc and vitamin E are helpful in preventing these blood clotting events. So, I have read the entire article and I've been talking for 29 minutes. I'm going to stop here. This is part 4. I'm going to add a part 5 because I'm going to sum it all up. I've got some notes right here already started. If you want to wait for me to get part 5 done, it'll come shortly, and I am looking forward to it, and I am glad you stuck it out this far. Remember, chiropractic is my favorite topic. It is my access point to your brain. I use the spine to reach your brain and influence your brain. And every chiropractic adjustment helps keep that sympathetic nervous system in balance. This is crucial to survival. And that is where everything starts for me. Chiropractic is the basic foundation of everything I talk about here. I'm glad you've been listening. There's more to come. Check out the website, createpurpose.com, and look at some of the older videos. And I thank you once again. Take care.